Hello.
Hello. Hello. Welcome. It's Sunday, Generational Change. I kind of feel like we should wait a few seconds because I feel like I'm saying that to one person and it's kind of sad, but I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and Jen has always said when we don't have a big audience immediately when we get started. But that's
But
the beautiful thing about the algorithm. We just gotta, get as many people's attention. Hit that like button if you can.
yeah, and I always remind myself that when we started this as a podcast of doing in-depth interviews and long-form interviews and creating like a real good library. So that's really what the goal is. The live thing is just, you might as well, if you're recording, you might as well go live and see what kind of fun you can have. But it's really not the point of this.
Well, I was on time, which is always good. And we're actually.
You know what, though? You know what? You're not really on time. You're not really on time.
We're a couple of minutes early. Yes.
No. It's between you and me. You are not early. You always go to the last possible second.
No, we did. Hello. You were late, Mario. So hit that like button. Share it everywhere.
Hello. There you go.
Speaking of hello, why don't you show the audience? And they will see it.
No, I don't want to show that. Why would we show that?
Okay, so it's supposed to be a surprise?
It's a surprise.
It'll be a surprise. All right, so we have a surprise you'll see
it's for our Festivus. It's for our Festivus celebration on Wednesday. So, and we have a lot of guests. I'm a little concerned that you're not keeping track of guests and that it's going to be like crazy.
I'm already telling people that if they can find, Merry Christmas, John. I think if there's like a specific, time slot, I'm thinking maybe like half-hour blocks, but basically when anybody could come on.
Right, but that could be totally crazy. I mean, so we've blocked off 8 to 10 on Wednesday for our Festivus celebration, and we have a lot of people, apparently, and I think that honestly, I think the grand finale of airing of grievances should be Steve Donziger. If anybody has grievances to air that's coming on our show, it is him. So.
Yeah, he would do well.
I think he's the grand finale. So Steve Donziger wants to join us for the airing of grievances, which is,
that's basically what's going to be happening throughout the night. And I'm sure everybody's going to have the little rants and stuff that they would like to share with everybody. So that'll obviously be very entertaining. And if there is somebody who has a lot of airing of grievances, it is our first guest this afternoon, because she is somebody who was doing her job and doing it well as it relates to the COVID crisis that we had here in Florida. And it was pretty bad, and it's still pretty rocky. Obviously, we've had multiple variants, but of course, there was a huge Omicron. It sounds almost like something out of Transformers or something.
You know what? Like, this is just more means to be marketing more. And Jason just said to me, so for people who don't know, my husband's a physician, not that makes him the be all end all of knowledge. And he's had his booster and he's on it, but he's saying that what this is showing is flat out that science is science, and this is going to keep evolving, and we're not going to be able to fight it. And
you're not going to be able to. Well, again, unless again, this gets back to the whole issue of not having a universal healthcare system versus a for-profit system. If we had a universal system, we could have gotten ahead of the curve a lot sooner. You're seeing the whole issue of the for-profit system right now. They're not granting the vaccine formula, if you will, to other parts of the world, because these variants.
Because they're greedy fucks. That's why.
And we're demonetized, and that's it for today.
You know what, Peter? When you met me like 3 years ago, you should have just accepted that we were going to be demonetized. I can't. There is nothing else for me to say.
Can't control the filter, but it's all good. Anyway, these variants. Remember, these variants are not starting in the United States. They're making their way over here from other parts of the world that are obviously not up to par with where things need to be, as far as whether it's through vaccination, herd immunity.
You say that, but we're not where we should be. So it's kind of like, we have pathetic healthcare. Other countries have their own problems. I mean, not all other countries have great healthcare, but we are being selfish and greedy. And by we, I mean really the oligarchy. I'm not. If it were mine, I'd give it. I'd be like Jonas Salk. I don't think that this is something that should be hoarded, but I don't think any healthcare should be for profit. So that's the problem here. The whole problem is that there is a profit motive in all of this.
Yes, there is a for-profit motive in the system overall, and that, of course, is the biggest issue that we face today because we don't know what's coming and going. As I try to explain to people, when you have a for-profit healthcare system, one of the biggest issues that isn't being talked about is the fact that there are millions upon millions of people in this country who do not trust big pharma when it comes
Nor
to
should they. And by the way, shout out, plug for this. If you guys haven't seen the miniseries Dope Sick, it's on Hulu. It highly recommend, highly recommend. And that it talks about the Purdue Pharma and the OxyContin and the all of that. And those people should be incarcerated.
When
they
you have
be in prison.
When you have people that were really doing work and we're really trying to bring to the attention of the people, we're not talking about the Faucis of the world, the people who go on TV all the time. We're talking about the people who really were doing the data research. And our first guest this afternoon is somebody who was doing that and was showing the truth about what was really going on in terms of the numbers, in terms of where it was strong, where it wasn't, all that. It wasn't a red-blue thing. It was just, this is the facts, this is what's going on. And of course,
remind people this story because this story is outrageous. I mean, we're going to be speaking with Rebekah Jones. She's running against Matt Gaetz.
That guy.
It's ridiculous to me that he even exists. He's a farce of himself to begin with, but whatever. But that she is the scientist whose house got raided. I mean, why don't you tell the backstory? I mean, or we can let her tell it, but it seems kind of like now we should be talking more about Congress.
Without further ado, she is running for Florida's 1st congressional district. You know it as Floribama. Rebekah Jones, welcome to Generational Change.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good.
Doing well, and happy Sunday.
So tell people, I mean, look, I think at the time, by the way, I was outraged on your behalf. And what happened to you is, all I can say is if they were in Texas, they would have been dead. So I just think it's really, really interesting that people can get away with stuff like that. But if you would briefly tell the backstory as to what happened to you from when you were trying to expose the actual information about COVID in your position.
Wow, that's a long backstory. And it seems to keep progressing into this kind of crazy, almost surreal and fantastical journey. But essentially, I was working for the Florida State Department of Health and their Emergency Response Bureau. I was the only person there who had all of the qualifications and skills and interest in promoting public information during the crisis. And so after months of begging to have some kind of public information portal, I finally got permission to do it. And I did it by myself for months. Everything was, it wasn't going smoothly. If anybody's worked, building a data surveillance system, it's not always fun. I was working 15, 16-hour days, but I knew it was important. So it didn't bother me. And I can honestly say that for the first few months, we did our absolute best to be as transparent and as honest with the information that we had. And then when DeSantis decided to open up the state, that changed. Nobody asked us if it was safe. Nobody asked us if we were ready. Nobody asked us if we even had enough data to figure that out. They just decided they were going to reopen and wanted us to make it look like the data supported that when it didn't. And so I was the one who was asked to make those changes. And I said no. Did not realize at the time that was a big deal. And I got fired very famously. I'm famous for getting fired and getting raided by the police, which is a very strange thing. But after I was fired, I decided that if the state was not going to provide all of the information that it had in a way that was easy for people to understand and consume and was put in the proper context, I would do it myself. And so that's what I started doing. And more people went to my alternative dashboard than ever went to the one I first built for the state by the time they killed both. And so I was having a lot of success with that. I actually co-founded the national tracking system for COVID-19 in schools with Google. And everything was actually going really great until one day the police started banging on my door early in the morning. And I thought, my husband and I had discussions when I first decided to kind of create this alternative, more informative and contextual dashboard that one day DeSantis might come for me. And that's what we thought was happening. And so, I threw on some clothes. I went downstairs. I was ready to go. I was like, all right, whatever this is, we'll deal with it. Doesn't need to be a dramatic, kind of thing. And as soon as I was outside with my hands up, they walked right past me and then pulled out their guns and pointed them at my kids.
See, that is outrageous to me. And has there been any consequences for that? Because that to me is clearly a violation of everything.
It's a violation of civil rights to point weapons, for police to point weapons at children who are not armed or under a certain age. And my daughter was 2.5 and my son was 11. So
those are tender age children, and that they are entitled to certain protection. And this is the fact that you didn't end up really getting arrested for beating the crap out of people this is one of those moments that fascinates me about people, because I would have been freaking out and clawing at people if they did that.
I probably would have been shot.
I was just going to say,
and I was aware of that. I mean, people are like, how did you stay so calm? I was like, I don't know. If you look at my face in that video, I would not say calm was the feeling that I had at that moment. I felt nothing when they pointed the gun in my face. But when they came into my house and I'm outside and there's nothing, I know that there's nothing I can do. And sorry, that's actually my food that just came super late. Yeah, I mean, it's almost paralyzing. I think maybe that's why I didn't have a reaction, to know that, if my 2-year-old daughter ran out from behind the stairs, she could be shot and killed. Or if my son, flinched in any way, that he could be killed. And of course they would say that, they flat out threatened it. When they were going through the house, they said, we don't want any accidents. And so it was really paralyzing. And, I'm heard on the video repeatedly asking for, to see the warrant. So I'm allowed to know why they're there and what they're allowed to look for and what they're allowed to take. And I kept hearing it's on the way, which, as far as Florida law is concerned, is not legal. I received the warrant 3 hours later as they were leaving and handing me the itemized list of what they were taking. I couldn't call a lawyer because they took my phones immediately. I couldn't tell them, hey, you're not allowed to look at that. Hey, you're not allowed to take that, because they didn't give it to me until they left. So we had to sit in my living room. I had to ask permission to, put my dog in a different room so they could go ransack it, with 3 armed guards not allowing us to leave our tiny little living room space. And, my daughter, who is the sweetest child on the planet and friendly with everyone, was trying to play with one of the officers, who I will say was the only one who was kind. And he's just, talking to her, trying to keep calm. And my son is clearly in a state of panic. And I later released one of the videos of him being pushed around in the doorway by an officer who's holding an AR-15, which is against his back and almost as tall as he is. And his fists are clenched. He's barefoot. It's December. It's very cold outside, with his head looking down. And you can see that he is just,
this would be very scarring for them. Even a 2.5-year-old that might be seemingly calm in the moment, it's this is traumatic. This is
I have to, for my own peace of mind, think that my daughter's too small to understand what was happening.
Yeah.
She's never seen a gun before. I feel like if she'd been more exposed to that kind of thing, she would understand that it was a danger. And I'm sure that the trauma that my husband and I and my son felt afterwards kind of signified to her, even subtly, that was something that was scary. But I really need to believe that long-term she'll be okay. But my son was not.
No.
11 years old.
It's so frustrating that there's no recourse. There should be.
We're suing. That's apparently the only recourse is to sue. And of course, none of them will pay for that. None of them have been suspended. None of them have been even investigated. It's a federal civil rights violation to do that. But, with the governor being the one who admitted days later that he sent them there, there's not exactly pressure for the state police to do anything about it when they answer to him, and he's the one who sent them there.
Yeah, it's an old boys club, and especially that's the case up in Flori-duh, where you are. That's what we call it. So, Peter, I know. Please say something. You want to say something?
Well, that was violation, Jen, as far as I know, of habeas corpus, right? There's
habeas corpus is just due process, and it is. But really, what we're looking at, what happened to Rebekah, that's the result of, in my opinion, the Patriot Act. Because the Patriot Act has basically eliminated the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments. Because now, if somebody is classified as a potential domestic terrorist or an enemy combatant, they have all these terms. Basically, you don't have to be afforded your 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights, and that can be arbitrarily decided now. So I wish I could say this was a one-off and it's just a DeSantis thing, but it isn't. This is,
yeah. People going after whistleblowers is, as much as we hail them and celebrate them decades later, think of like Daniel Ellsberg, the Vietnam Pentagon Papers whistleblower, who was my first endorsement and is a good friend and not somebody I ever thought I would ever speak to, much less become a friend with. I have to admit, I totally fangirled the first time that we had a conversation. It was like, holy shit, Dan Ellsberg. I'm sorry.
I already demonetized this, but I got to tell you,
that I changed the number to 2 hours ago. How does he have the number? And I don't care. Let's talk.
Yeah. I've gotten a few phone calls myself in the past couple of years that have been kind of like total fangirl moments. I still get it when I talk to Nina Turner, and I've talked to her before. Every time it happens, it doesn't get old. But and we are very much like proactive regarding keeping the word out about Assange and keeping everything like in people's minds. This is a topic that we cover quite a bit. So, and we've had, like we said, we have Steve Donziger's coming on to air his grievances on Festivus. Are you familiar with Steven Donziger?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So
I'm good friends with one of his very good friends. So we haven't, I think we've messaged once, maybe. I wish I could say for sure, but Josh Fox, he's an Academy Award nominated director, is my best friend in the whole world. And so cool. They know each other really well. He's been telling us that we need to get together. But the thing is that, raids like this happen all the time.
Yeah.
And Dan Ellsberg, as much as everyone acknowledges now that he was a hero who probably single-handedly ended the Vietnam War, at the time he was arrested and charged with treason. They ransacked his psychiatrist's office to get his notes from his doctor to try to portray him as a crazy person. And they did everything they could in the public arena to smear him and defame him and undermine his credibility and his education and, what his role was, because he was a data analyst who blew the whistle in Vietnam. And so, every time somebody who comes out who's a scientist or a data person and says, oh, crap, the narrative doesn't fit the data, they go after them as viciously as they can. And it usually takes a while for people to be celebrated for that. I frankly was aware of this. And I don't think anybody was more shocked than I was that the public came rallying to my side as much as they did, because that's usually a long road.
I think it is a sign that we've made some amount of progress, and with the exception of pissing off the Clintons and maybe the Queen and certain people that there's just no saving you from, you know what I mean? Like that's the goal. I mean, I still am wondering what the over under is on Ghislaine Maxwell, because I can see her being Arkansas-ed any day now. I
can't say that I agree with that.
No, I would say that there's always the kill switch, as I like to say.
But someone's going to.
Yeah. And I think what you've done is extremely courageous, because, again, anytime you speak truth to power to very powerful people, and the same happened with Cuomo in New York, it takes a lot of guts to do it. And as you said, you knew that if you were going to cross who a lot of people think could potentially be the next president, he's going to come at you with everything he's got. And he probably did that and more. And now you find yourself in a very unique position, running for Congress in a very red area, but against what I consider to be potentially an opening, because you're not only running against a disgraced representative, but somebody who very likely could be facing federal indictments for trafficking minor. And that is a serious deal in the state of Florida, as you know. So if you could talk about what ultimately led to you running against Matt Gaetz, yes, that guy, for the U.S. Congress, the embodiment of the worst kind of nepotism we have in our politics. He is that and then some. If you could talk about what ultimately led to that and how things are going at this point.
So my husband and I wanted to come back to Florida. So after the raid, just a few weeks later, we, packed up and we moved to a place that we knew would protect us from DeSantis, and that was the DC area. I was in sprinting distance, I think, of 4 different international consulates that if something happened, I could, run and say, nana, nana, boo, boo, you can't touch me. We didn't know how long that would last, but we always planned to come back. And we thought that we'd have to wait until DeSantis was voted out to do that because we didn't think we'd be safe here if he was still there. And then in May, a year after I filed my whistleblower complaint, to the shock of myself, my lawyers, and I think pretty much all of the media, the Florida Department of Health Inspector General's office found in my favor and officially granted me protected whistleblower status, protecting me from any, end quote, adverse action taken against me from any state agency, including the governor. And so I was actually in Mississippi visiting my parents, shooting a documentary with Josh Fox when I got that email. And I suddenly felt like this changes everything. This changes everything. And of course, I was familiar with the allegations against Matt Gaetz for a long time. I was first familiarized with him during COVID when he was parading around the Capitol with a, World War II era looking gas mask, mocking COVID. And that day I was in the State Emergency Operations Center working on a public information portal to dispel the types of misinformation that he at the exact same moment was spreading. And so that was my first introduction to him. And I turned my own grandfather into the FBI for sex trafficking years ago. And he was sent to prison in the Philippines. They busted a sex trafficking ring. It actually made international press, but I was, I guess, technically an informant. So my information was never, sorry. I see the Beavis picture. That's funny.
Yeah, that's my rendition of Matt Gaetz. I'm sorry. Continue.
Well, that's butthead.
Yeah.
Yes, it's butthead. Yes.
I had a very personal issue with sex traffickers, especially of minors. And I had gone to pretty great lengths to make sure that someone in my own family went to prison for it. And I grew up not far from here. I grew up about an hour from Pensacola on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. So, same culture, ugly beaches. And not we have all the problems with all the pretty, is what I always say. And I spent my honeymoon here, and every time I wanted to go somewhere nice, this is where we went, and I've been working for the state of Florida for years and had an investment, not just, here, but in the whole state. And I thought we deserve better than Matt Gaetz. And seeing that the last few races, nobody got more than about a third of the vote. Even the people who on paper, checked all the boxes. Phil Ayer was the previous candidate in 2018 and 2020. And he's a great guy. He actually, withdrew to support me. And he was a military veteran, and white, older, like I said, all the boxes, and didn't do markedly better than the person who ran before him. And it was, partly because Trump was on the ballot in 2020 and he's not now. And that I'm sure played a big role in it. And that Matt Gaetz never actually had to campaign here because he felt assured that he had this district locked up. He never even said his opponent's name publicly.
But what is it? It's a red district, right? Like what is it?
R30. Yeah. And I'm trailing him now by 6.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's one of those things that requires a perfect storm, and him being him certainly lends itself to that. Like, to me, he is like a total buffoon. Like, yes. I don't know how anybody could take him seriously. He almost looks like a caricature to me.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I had kind of this humanizing moment. And he's had to address me several times now, which means he's threatened because he's attacked me on Twitter multiple times. Yeah. And there was kind of a humanizing moment when we were at the airport together last week and flying from DC to here. And I didn't know who he was because, he wore his mask the whole time. Like, he says he doesn't, and had, the hat on and everything. So, without the face and the hair, I didn't realize who he was. And I actually had a perfectly pleasant exchange with his wife. And apparently he thought that was some kind of like tough guy power move. And I was like, no, I'm generally not mean to strangers. I try in life not to just be rude to people from the outset if I don't know them. I don't know this woman. I have nothing against this woman. There's no reason for me to be mean. And so I got bumped up to first class from backing coach, and we had to board and then disboard because of some mechanical thing. So we got delayed for hours, and I didn't want to sit next to him because I thought that would be uncomfortable. And I know he's pretty fast and loose with the COVID precautions. So, I'm not looking to get sick and hadn't had my booster yet. I just got it a few days ago. And so while we were in the second delay, I got talking to this nice guy who was sitting next to me in the airport. He was up for the Pearl Harbor remembrance stuff, and he was, a vet. And so he was supposed to be in the row behind where I was originally sat. So I asked him, I was like, do you want to switch? I'm like in first class, and they got big seats, and I don't need all the extra leg room. I'm only like 5'6". And so we swapped. And so all I did was post that it was awkward to, like running into somebody at the airport that and maybe don't think fondly of, like, people alleged sex trafficking. It was awkward, and I didn't want to sit next to him, so I swapped seats with this vet I got talking to, and he apparently freaked out he was like, oh, I wasn't in first class. I was like, I didn't say you were in first class. I said, I got bumped to first class. I have my ticket. Why don't you show yours? And you were right behind me. And made like this huge fit about it. And I guess when I shared my ticket, he didn't have anything else to say about that. But he's intimidated because he never said Phil Ayer's name once, and yet he can't shut up about me. So
yeah, and I think there's as I tell Jen, as I tell anybody who's on the progressive, non-corporate side of politics, if they're attacking you, that's a good thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, as soon as I declared, his press person sent out this like crazy, ridiculous statement about how I was going to lock up your lives, mask your children, and let Black Lives Matter, burn your businesses to the ground. It was like crazy. And I was like, oh boy, that's what they're trying to paint me as.
and you have the right, you have the right disposition. You have the right disposition, which is, okay, think whatever you want. I'm going to beat you.
I mean, some of the things that I've heard over the last year and a half, I'm so desensitized to the ridiculousness of some of the things that are said. Like, I went to a school board meeting to advocate for a mask policy right after one of the students here who was 15 died and of COVID-19. And an educator at that point was fighting for his life who later died. Actually, the first school employee that we know of who died of COVID-19 was in my district in Milton. His name was Joe Austin. He got sick at a July 4th party in 2020, was in and out of the hospital, thought he had finally beaten it, was in his car on the way to go home, and he had a heart attack and passed away not long after. And, as a data person, people think that it's just numbers, but those stories stick with us too. And somebody came up and was talking about how like, this isn't even a real meeting. Like, Rebekah Jones is here. What is she doing? She doesn't even have children. And I was like, I don't even have children. Dear God, I don't even have children anymore. It's like, who are these gremlins in my house, and why am I caring for them? And where did these stretch marks come from? You have to laugh the ridiculousness stuff off because that's what it really is. It's just people trying to throw whatever, poo at the wall they can and seeing if some of it sticks. And if you let it bother you, then I don't think you're cut out for this.
Let me ask you, I have a question. What sort of support, if any, or are you getting anything from the local Dems? Are there local Dems? Are there any up there? I know well, look, we have them here, but they don't do anything. So,
Well, I will have to say that Lil Eubanks is the chair of the Escambia County Democratic Party, and she's amazing. And she's, impartial because that's her job. But it's been a great support. And most of the, response that I've gotten here has been incredible. It's great to have, Democrats ready to go for you, especially considering you have to get MPAs and, yes, Republicans. I'm polling in the 30s with Republicans, and Matt Gaetz is polling in the 40s. There is a huge block of Republican likely voters who are saying, I don't know what I'm going to do, or I'm going to skip it.
Right.
Well, I would definitely say this. You are a data person, and you would know probably what the numbers are in terms of how many MPAs are actually in the district. As much as there are, the GOPers who say they'll vote for you, the reality is that's not something you can bank on. However, you can definitely get the independent voters to come to your side because they're simply tired of this guy who doesn't take his job seriously, and you have name recognition. Fundraising is solid. And of course, you obviously present yourself in a great way. You're a likable candidate. You have this, you got this pizzazz about you, which is great. And you're a fresh face. And again, you would take this job seriously. This is not a job that the current representative, who was only there because of his very powerful father, is sitting in that seat. So at the end of the day, I do think that there is something to be said for the perfect storm, as Jen alluded to, but what is it going to take? What do the numbers look like as far as the independent voters go? Because that is the path to victory.
Well, it's great because in her case, Peter, this is a general. We unfortunately did not have the luxury of having the Republicans and NPAs that liked us actually be able to vote for us. And unlike your Democratic county chair, which sounds awesome, you're like, her job is to be impartial. Like if you met some of the Democratic party people down here, the word impartial would be the last thing that would come to
That's
mind.
what ultimately.
I said she was impartial.
Right,
Not all of
yeah.
them are.
Right.
I was asked to, kiss the ring by a small group of women who shockingly still hold positions, not locally, but, with the state. And I said no. I was asked, not to blindly support every Biden policy, to never, disagree publicly with any of that, and to fall in line and to only support Democratic candidates. And I was not allowed to support MPAs or in a Republican only race, the Republican who was the most reasonable and, good person there. And I was like, would you like me to quit now? Because that's a losing strategy. And have you approached every candidate who's run in this, district for the last 30 years with this, proposition or really an ultimatum? And because that would explain why you haven't won.
You bring up an amazing point, and this is one of the best ways to wind down this conversation. That doesn't work with the people that we were in the room with in Orlando. But you know who it does work with? It works with the people living in the 1st Congressional District. And that is who you are running to serve. You are not running to serve the big wigs of the Democratic establishment. You are running to serve the people of the 1st District of Florida who desperately need real representation.
And I'm sure they're very different than our people. So it's a whole different audience there.
What is your website? What are your handles? Where can people find you? How can they get more involved in your campaign? Phone banking, text banking. If you're in anywhere near the Florida Panhandle, whether you're in Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, if you're in North Florida and you can get to the 1st District to help with canvassing, Rebekah could definitely use it. Rebekah, what is your website? How can people help out?
So, my first name is spelled weird, but it is on the screen. So it's RebekahJonesCampaign.com. And you can sign up to volunteer, you can donate, you can download petitions. So because we're in a redistricting year, any registered voter in the state of Florida can send a ballot petition for congressional candidates. We do have this form.
Isn't that nice?
Is it? And I really do want to show a strong, show of support across the entire state to say this isn't just here. Everyone wants somebody who's going to hold government accountable, who's going to tell them the truth, who's going to go to DC and come back and explain to them in a way that understands what is happening, how it impacts them, and then listen to what they think about it. And so if you can fill out a petition, you can send it to our mailing address, which is also on our website. That's a huge help. And, help us out any way that you can.
Yeah, guys, share social media. I always tell you, the more people you spread it to, could be somebody who can donate even if you can't donate. So just keep spreading it. That's really
correct.
important.
And I'm on Instagram. Rebekah Jones for Congress is the same for Facebook. Waiting until Jack Dorsey is finally out as CEO of Twitter next year to get my Twitter campaign back. So we should have an account up for that soon. And because of course DeSantis had me suspended for sharing a Miami Herald News article that did a 6-month-long investigation that determined that I told the truth about everything, including sworn affidavits from Department of Health officials. So
you were Twitter banned. You were Twitter banned.
I was, for sharing a Miami Herald News article. And the worst part of it is that Twitter didn't even bother making up a good excuse for why they suspended me. They said that was actually the reason. So, that's hopefully once he's out and a more reasonable person is in there, they'll stop.
It's funny because what's funny is that I actually think it's reasonable to punish people for sharing a Miami Herald article, but that's just because it's a rag and nobody should be sharing their crap with anybody.
I cannot agree with you on that. Every person
I used to work there. Actually, I'm a second generation native to the Miami area. And I remember when that paper really was something. And it was
Sarah Blasky was the person I was working with most. And if she does not win a Pulitzer Prize at some point, I would be shocked.
There's definitely good individual reporters. That's not the issue. It's the editorial board and how a paper is run and the decisions that they make, and it's how it's run. That's what I'm talking about. I know that they have decent writers.
If I remember correctly, I think I forgot the lady's name. I think she was writing for the Miami Herald, who uncovered the whole Epstein scandal. So it goes without saying that it really is about the individual. The organization itself is a whole other story.
Well, all institutions have issues. I mean, let's not pretend that like all universities, aren't institutions that strike to protect themselves any more than, a for-profit company or even a nonprofit company is capable of doing. But, I did double major in science and journalism through each of my degrees. And so I'm very defensive of the journalists, who are out there doing the good fight.
Oh, Dan, I'm a journalism background. I did undergrad and master's at journalism schools. Like I take it very seriously, and I've noticed the shift and I've noticed the change. And I used to work at the Herald back when I was in high school, and I know how it used to be, and I know how it is not now. And I remember seeing that change, and it is disappointing. But I will at least say this: they are infinitely better than the Sun Sentinel. That's a hack. That's a hack paper for sure.
On that note,
and they've got good people too. So, they were the ones who broke the story about DeSantis not releasing the reports that the government had been telling them weekly that they needed to support, and that they were lying about what the state reports were telling them. And they were the ones who broke that. And I know that because I've worked with their journalists. Actually, that was the week before I got raided. I was in contact with the reporters who were working on the story the whole time. I think part of what happened to me was a result of the fact that the previous week, DeSantis was dragged through the mud by the Sun Sentinel. And a lot was revealed, even through some of my own sources, that they were lying about what was happening in the state and what Trump's administration was telling them they needed to do. And it takes in this kind of age for a newspaper that doesn't have like the clout or the, dedicated readership of like the Washington Post to be so aggressive in calling out government malfeasance in this state. And yes, the Sun Sentinel sometimes is off the mark, but they also have done some amazing work in investigative journalism regarding COVID-19.
And you have certainly done an amazing job, and you will continue to do so. We will be doing a Florida panel at some point in 2022. We hope you will join.
We have one of the later elections, and you're not running in a primary.
We're not until August, or yours will be obviously next November. But obviously, thank you for doing what you're doing. It was great meeting you. Let's keep the conversation going. Guys, RebekahJonesCampaign.com. Check it out. Thank you so much. Have a Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Bye, Rebekah.
Happy Festivus, too.
For the rest of us.
Festivus for the rest of us.
She was lovely.
And Mario got that one because he says, I bet you Jen will say she's lovely by the time.
I do. Well, I feel like,
No, but she's a badass.
And she was really cute. She had with the red lipstick and the thing in her hair. She was really cute. She's got that
classic look. And again, what she said.
Maybe Betty from Betty and Veronica.
What I think really stood out was the fact that she said, she basically is saying, I'm running to represent the people of the 1st Congressional District. I am not concerned about you party bigwigs and what you think I need to do to win in the panhandle. Don't tell me what I need to do. I'm the one out there talking to the voters and listening to what they have to say. And the idea that they are at least open to the idea of supporting somebody like her. let her do her thing.
See, if anybody can ruin it, it will be the Democrat institution. If anybody can ruin anything with their advice, it will be the Democratic Party.
If you are somebody who is running for Congress in the Panhandle, and you are taking the advice of people in Southeast Florida to win in that area, that's a losing strategy. So hats off to Rebekah. She definitely knows her stuff. And I think she's, listen, I think it's going to take a miracle, but she does have Gaetz' scandal as a potential wild card, if you will, because I think it is. Because I think Gaetz could actually be
a creeper, and he's just a creeper. Yeah. I'm not going to say whether or not he's a pederast. I don't really know whether or not he's a pederast, because the reality is there is a difference between a pederast and somebody driving with a 17-year-old across the street.
I understand that, but
while it's still lechy and gross.
But here's the thing: if he committed federal crimes, and it's pretty clear, as far as I can see that he did, it's like, at what point do we start holding our elected officials accountable?
No, he needs to be accountable for child sex trafficking if that was in the letter of the law, which I think it is, because he drove across state lines. Like, absolutely. What I'm saying is, on a personal level, on a moral level, what he did is not the same thing as somebody who's a pedophile. And to me, it's an important distinction. He's just creepy and lechy and gross.
Well, we definitely go from the not so dignified to the very dignified. And we are very pleased to welcome today a gentleman who has served our country proudly and is now an author of the book, Life is So Precious. It is always a treat when we get to speak to somebody who has served our country, because when it comes to the issues of war, particularly the military-industrial complex, the opinion that matters most to me, as I'm sure it does to you, Jen, is somebody who is willing to put on the uniform. The ones who are not willing to put on the uniform like to voice their opinion very strongly about this, but I always defer to those who will stand and will do what is necessary. So without further ado, Alton Pete, welcome to Generational Change.
Yes, thank you for having me, and happy holidays to you all.
Same to you, sir.
Happy holidays to you. So it's nice to meet you. And I see that your book has actually been out for a while. So, this isn't like a recent thing, but the name of your book is Life is So Precious. And if you would sort of talk a little bit about the experience that you had. I know that you were in combat. I know you served for a really long time. What was the inspiration for this particular book? Because I'm sure that over your years, there were a lot of things you could write about.
Yes, I want to first say that the sacrifice was well worth it, and that serving our country and doing what we had to do to keep everybody at peace and to make the peace around the world was certainly an honor. And I wrote the book because I met so many people throughout my 26 years and 4 months in the Army. And when I was getting ready to retire, I just felt like I wanted to do more and do better. I felt like I had so much more to give. So the words "life is so precious" is so profound that I just wanted to figure out a way how we were able to keep people lifted and keep them motivated and inspired.
And I think that's becoming increasingly difficult right now. Like, I think we're definitely at we're in a dark place. Like, I feel like there's almost this dark, and it isn't just that I'm a negative person. I don't think I'm a negative person, but just there's a lot of desperation right now, and people are in a really bad way. And I think it's so important for people to hear messages that are like this, because everything is cyclical, which is like what's really bad right now could be really good tomorrow. I mean, that's just how it works. And I really appreciate you putting that out there. Talk a little bit about what's in the book.
What's in the book is a collection of short stories about me growing up from the Bay Area. And I also have some good sound advice and good tips about life and how to look at everything from a different angle and dimension. And because we go through certain things in life, like the pandemic that really hit us so bad, certain things in life is not to tear us down, but it's actually to build us up to get to the next level. And if you can get past that hurt and pain, you'll realize what you went through was beneficial for you later on down the road. So I like to keep everybody in that mindset to know that this is not to break you down. It's just to build you up to become better. And we got so many hidden secrets on the inside of us until something has to happen to bring the good out of you. And it's almost the same as like when people go search for gold or oil or diamonds, you got to keep pressing and chiseling away just to get that prize. So if you don't quit and when you don't give up, you will reap the benefits.
We're speaking with Alton Pete, former combat veteran and author of Life is So Precious. You know, we talk a lot today about the issues with the military industrial complex in particular. But as me individually, I learned more from my grandfather than anybody in my life, and he served in World War II. And I would love to hear from you what you found to be the most beneficial serving your country, what it taught you, you know, why there is value in serving your country. I mean, there's a difference between serving your country and serving in combat. There's also that's distinction as well. But what have you learned, and what did that do for you personally, serving in the United States military?
Well, it provided a lot of things across the spectrum. I mean, for one, I've learned that discipline is my best friend. I mean, without anything in life, you've got to have discipline. You got to sacrifice. I mean, nothing is going to come easy, but you're going to have to give up something in order to get something. And also, just learning the overall duty of just doing something that's proud, doing something to help somebody else, and doing something that's making a difference across the communities and in the neighborhoods and just around the world. That was very dear to my heart because I'm a people person and I love everybody. So I just wanted to do whatever I could, whatever I would, for all the ones who don't have. Now, when you visit these other countries, a lot of them are not as privileged as we are here in America. Just speaking about Iraq, you know, being in there 16 months, we got attacked 67 times every month. And it was hot over there. It was like it got up to 147 for 6 months.
Jesus.
So you got to be able to weather the storm and get through it all and adapt and overcome. But it taught me a lot of things of just how blessed we are here in America. I mean, just like we have so many homelessness now, reminds me of Iraq. And it's because we have to do better here in America. We have to show the people that we care. The politicians, they got to just not only come around when they're trying to get your vote, but they got to go back to those areas where they got that vote and show the people that they care and they want to make a difference. Right now, we're hurting so bad. I mean, people are without hope, faith, self-esteem is low, the courage is low, and they just don't care anymore. So I'm just the one that's sticking my head out like a turtle, coming out that shell, and I want to make a difference and show everyone and let them know, because words matters like action matters, that your life is so precious. You're valuable. You're important. You mean a lot to all of us. And that's my message.
I think you also bring up a really great point, and that is, of course, you know, that value that you get from serving, but also how detrimental it can be, you know, fighting, you know, a proxy war, if you will, in the desert, not knowing where or when things are going to be, you know, coming at you. And, you know, we talk a lot on our show. We are obviously huge advocates for a universal healthcare system, particularly Medicare for all, and the value that that would bring in terms of mental health, and particularly when you are a combat veteran and what that is like, and what that does to so many who serve in our country, whether they go through the trials and tribulations of being attacked or not, knowing what that's like and knowing where we need to go. That, I think, is one of the biggest things that doesn't get talked about enough, that we'd love to hear your thoughts on. You know, we praise the military and those who serve all the time, but in terms of what we do as a nation, like you said, especially when they come back from combat, we do not take care of our veterans the way they need to be taken care of.
Right. Yeah, I would be the first to say, before we get started on that, is we need to, when you go to combat and you put your life on the line and you're in harm's way, I really feel in my heart the Congress should continue to keep us with that hazardous pay, because you shouldn't have to go to war and then come back and you don't have nothing. We should get that hazardous pay. They need to pass an act or bill or something for the president to sign for all the veterans, all those who have served in combat, and just show them. That's a good way to show that we care. And also, it is imperative that we do get psychological help seeking behavior therapist or something, because the military is psychologically, is mentally and physically draining, and it will take a toll on you. It will mess you up. Sometimes you don't know if you're going or coming. Now, I've been out of combat since 2007 beginning, for those 16 months, and I still have flashbacks. Like if I hear a truck, like the FedEx or UPS, they make this swish sound. Well, that sound is the sound of the Iraqis when they were attacking us with those mortar rounds. So sometimes I got to look and see around, am I home in safe grounds, or if I'm in combat again. So that plays on your mind a lot, and then the nightmares. So, and I have seek counseling because that's why I'm doing great as I am today and better. But I would advise everybody who served in country, theater, get that help. It doesn't make you less of a man or a woman to do so. Get that help. Show the people that you care about yourself. Make self-awareness. Make that the front of your agenda. Seek counseling, because I'm telling you, it works, and it really it helps you down the road.
I think in general, we don't provide services to our veterans that are, I mean, for the most part, I don't think there should necessarily have to be a VA, because I think we should all just have healthcare. Everybody who gets sick, and no matter what you have, should just be able to get what you need. So there wouldn't necessarily have to be separate healthcare. But the fact that you are not sort of automatically given the counseling, like you shouldn't have to go ask for help as much as you have to ask for help. Like it should be something that's considered. Yeah, if you go to combat, you're probably going to have a little PTSD. You're probably
you are going to have it.
So I think it's like, to me, you shouldn't have to wait until somebody has been home for however much time and their whole life has fallen apart, and they possibly are addicted to whatever they're addicted to first say, oh, maybe you should have some counseling. Like this should be the kind of thing that's just institutional within the military, that is how we treat our people after they serve. Like that's just, I think people get too far into it that they don't even know that they need help. Right. And it gets to where it's late. And I think that would be better suited if we just assume that when people have to go into combat, that it's going to mess with their minds, and maybe we should treat that. That's, just
exactly, because when you're over there, you are exposed to so many things that you do not see here in America. I mean, it's poverty over there, and those people, if they're in the villages and the towns, they don't have the resources that other people have. Like when he was around Saddam, he mainly took care of the people that was closest to him. In the villages, you have to defend for yourself. So therefore, those people are just scraping. They scraping to stay alive, and the kids are not in school because there is no schools, not in those areas where we were. So we need to do better. We need to do more. I really feel that in my heart, because you shouldn't always have to wait until it's too late to react. Sometimes some people can turn it around, and others, if they just can't, because they're so far out there from the drug usage and alcoholism. And by the time you try to go save them, they're probably on their last days. Suicide has really creeped up, which is another big concern of mine, because we have to show we got to do more. We just have to. We got to use those resources. We got to go out there and get them. And I believe it should be mandatory. When we come out of war, it should be mandatory that you see counseling. That should be part of your demobbing.
Yeah, one of the things that I know, just for example, is that like domestic violence rates among returning soldiers is extremely high proportionate to the rest of society. Like there is a higher rate for domestic violence. There's a higher rate for drug addiction and alcoholism. Right. Like all of those things are at a higher suicide are at a higher rate from people that have been through trauma. Go figure.
Right.
And that to me is just common sense. And, I've always had an issue with this. My husband did a rotation years ago at the VA when he was in med school, and I got to see it. And it was horrifying to me. This was in Indianapolis, but it was horrifying. And I could not believe that this is how we treat veterans. And then at one point I got the privilege of going onto an aircraft carrier, the USS Saratoga, when it was stationed. It was in Nice. This was a long time ago. And I remember walking through where they lived, where where they lived. And I can't believe we treat our service people that badly either. They had lead in their water and all sorts of stuff. And I remember thinking, this is how we treat people that are serving our country. And I always found it outrageous.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed that we do hire a lot more service members in those VA departments and clinics where across the United States. We need that more because they truly understand what it's like to go into combat and in a war. Versus somebody who just in a position, they don't know. They don't know what it took and what you go through on an everyday basis. So we need more people that have that connection to you, who have experienced that, so that where you get the proper care and the proper help that you need.
That goes without saying, and I think that also speaks to, Capitol Hill passed the military budget the other day, and it was about $800 billion. And what I don't think it's talked about enough is how much of that money is going to the MIC, is going to Raytheon and Boeing and Honeywell and General Dynamics. How much of that money is actually going to our veterans? That is something that doesn't get pointed out. Of that $800 billion, how much of it is going to fund the VA properly, which it doesn't? How much of it is going to the benefits of veterans who are serving or have served? It doesn't. And I think that is something, when we talk about our military budget, people would be a lot more open to having a very big military budget if they knew that our veterans were being properly taken care of and the MIC was not getting the overwhelming lion's share of that money. I think that that's something that would unite a lot of people. How do you feel about that?
I feel like, of course, we have to keep up with the modern technology, and we have to keep up with the weapons, because we got the enemies, other countries around our world who are constantly trying to figure out ways to take us down. But what they need to do is let it be a separate pot of money. If you're going to do for the equipment and the technology, do a budget for that, but take care of the personnel. If you're trying to combine the two, it's not going to work. Somebody is going to get left out, or something will get left out, which is our veterans. And that does concern me, and that's dear to my heart. We've got to take care of our veterans. We've got to. Whenever you sacrifice your life, even just going into Iraq, that was a 24-hour flight. That's the longest flight I've ever had. And then coming back to America, because we landed in Maine, I had to kiss the ground when we got off that flight, that big old Quest flight. I kissed the ground because I was so grateful, so thankful to make it home safely. And with my right mind, I was exhausted, but like I said in the beginning, the sacrifice was well worth it. We've got to take care of our veterans. Yes. Set aside those funds in a different pot so we won't have our veterans being left behind, because they tell you that all along. We don't leave a comrade behind. But what are we doing? We're leaving us all behind. And then we got to fight tooth and nail just to get something passed. I don't think that's right.
No, it's definitely not right.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right, and this is a great debate issue when it comes to the left and right in politics. The left, to their detriment, doesn't recognize that we do have other nations around the world who do seek to take us down. This is not hyperbolic. This is very true.
Yeah, that's constant. That's like a 24-hour man watch. It's constant. Yep.
It is. It's us. It's us. It's Russia, and it's China. And basically, we are the three nations that more or less run the world. And there's these proxies that are all over the place in the Middle East and in Europe and everywhere. And this is a 24/7 thing. That doesn't mean that all of the money that is being spent on the military it needs to be spent as much or is being spent properly. That is where people need to come together. This idea of the military's this and that, no, you don't understand. That part you're incorrect about, but as far as where the money actually is going, that you are correct about. And that is something on the conservative side that they also need to get their act together with, which is this idea of you can never spend enough on the military. You can never not be doing this, that, and the other thing. There really is this entrenchment that exists in almost every government entity that we have. But in the case of the military-industrial complex, it's not about whether we are spending enough to take care of our veterans. We're not even close. But what we are doing is overwhelmingly spending hundreds of billions of dollars every year on industry that doesn't need it. It's a jobs program. I had a good friend who also served in Iraq. He was a lieutenant, and he informed me about a specific situation in which he knew of a person who got a contract in Baghdad for a gas station. And how much money did he get for that gas station as a military contractor? $25 million. So when something like that happens, let's just say that you wanted to build a beautiful, glorious gas station. Okay, I'll give you $500,000 to do that. Of the $24.5 million that you got that you didn't deserve, that's veterans' money that they should have right now, and you took it away from them because of what the system is.
Well, this is the insidious profit motive. The military complex, if there was, again, there shouldn't be private contractor profit motives. We've had that. That has been the key problem for all of them in recent history, as far as I'm concerned, whether it was like Dick Cheney and Halliburton or whatever it is. It's these for-profit contractors that it's like anything else. It's like healthcare. They actually profit more when people suffer more.
That's true.
Because then they're able to save their money for their profit and not spend it on protecting people.
That's right, because you also got KBR. They're in that list, and But when is it ever going to be a time when lives value and more, they are more important than the money? I mean, when is that ever going to come back around again? And I feel like my personal assessment, $800 billion is not even enough to scratch the surface for our veterans and all those in the military. That money will go so fast because you need constant aid, you need financial aid, you need things to be taken care of. We have a lot of service members who are permanently impaired and missing body parts, who needs to have homes built a certain way so they can be able to live a good, happy, and safe life. So we got to deal with that. We got to redo the homes. We got to make the homes better. We got to make it to where it's big enough for the wheelchair to get around.
Yeah.
So all that costs money. We could have better services for that as well. Because it just saddens my heart, to see all our service members who are just wounded. When I was in San Diego, I went to the hospital because I had to have surgery before I retired. And I saw all these, in Balboa, San Diego, I saw all our service members, men and women. I mean, just from IEDs blowing them up and the convoys being attacked. And they were just permanently, those parts are gone. And that's why life is so precious. I'm just looking at them and I'm saying life is so precious. We have the physical wounds, but we got the inside wounds, the ones that you can't even see. That's tearing us up. So you need another program for that, So it's going to take somebody to step up, to go to Capitol Hill, to say, hey, we need to do this today. We've lollygagged long enough. We need to do this today.
Yeah.
And if it takes me, I'll do it. I'll do it. We need to do this today. It should be a debate.
Where are you located?
I'm in California.
Yeah, who's your congressperson?
I have a Congressman Shiner. He's out in Walnut Creek, California, here, not far from me.
I know where Walnut Creek is. I had a friend who lived in that area, actually.
Right.
It's so pretty there. That's a beautiful area.
Yeah, we got a lot of rain right now. We in this storm thing going on right now.
Hey, California can always use rain.
Yeah, well, Northern California can definitely get depressing weather. It's not like San Diego or anything like that. But I like it. I don't mind that foggy, rainy. I like it.
Yeah.
He may not be your congressperson, but Ro Khanna is definitely one of those representatives who is very he's very receptive to this and to what you're talking about. He's in the district that represents San Jose. I believe it's 12. I think he's 12.
He's Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
He's all the wealthy people.
He is, but he is one of the good ones, and the importance of getting the word out. I think there is an opportunity to bridge this divide that really does exist between the left and the right on the military question, because I do think most people agree on our veterans and on protecting our veterans and making sure that if you do put on the uniform and are willing to stand on the front line and die for this country, you should be given basically the red carpet, as far as I'm concerned. because most people are not willing to do it.
Yeah.
And that to me is the great unifier. We do agree that the military budget is horrifically bloated because of the MIC, not because of veterans, not because of what they need and the sacrifice that they make. And if we can figure out a way to build that consensus amongst the veterans, and even though most of them are on the political right, I think most of them do agree on this, that this is something that can be done, even if it's just a question of reallocating where the money goes. That is something that I think we can unify a lot of people on. And the fact that you say it so eloquently just in the title, life is so precious. You know, we take this for granted so often, but it's a little bit different for me personally, because I have had friends and family that have served in the military. And it is very important to me that they are treated with the type of dignity and respect that they should be treated with. Because as you know, all too often, when you sign up, when you go to basic, and especially when you're over there, they'll give you everything you need. But the second you're out, the second you're not there, forget it. You're just a number now.
Well, it's expendable. They're expendable.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna give y'all another one. We got to take better care of our female soldiers, from the lowest enlisted to the highest ranking, because we have female soldiers come up missing, and we shouldn't turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to that. They matter as well. It takes all of us collectively to make a team. So we need to do better care with our females, even if they're lower enlisted, because you know, when you first join the Army, it's new, it's like foreign. You don't know your way around, so you're vulnerable. So therefore, we need better mentorship. We need better leaders that's going to step up and do the right thing. I've done it all my career.
There's got to be this happy medium between what kind of personality is needed in the military versus a total toxic masculinity thing that is just so misogynistic, where women are not safe. Like there has to be like certain compromises that are made. Like obviously you can't have like, you know, pansy people, like all fairy dust people running around the military, but yet there needs to be an atmosphere where women aren't more vulnerable or preyed upon.
Right. I agree with that as well. I agree.
And the level of respect, that's another thing. There is something to be said, as my grandfather told me years ago, about the military will turn you into a man, as he would like to say. But that is true, and more so in the line of the military will make you a well-rounded adult. And I do believe that. I still believe that. I think.
It is. Yeah, it is, and it will. Matter of fact, it's going to give you guidance. And it sets you apart from the rest of your friends who are still on those street corners doing nothing. And when you come back home, they still doing nothing. And now that I'm retired, they still on those corners doing nothing. So it helps you to go full force in whatever you want to be and do in your life. It provides all kind of, perks. You get that DD-214 that reads honorable retirement. It shows everything you've done and accomplished throughout the military. That is such a great accolade to have in your possession, knowing that you sacrificed your life, and now they have to reward you. They have to recognize you. No one can ever take that away, and that's why I'm so honored.
We are very grateful that you came on our show today. I think there is so much to learn. There is so much for people to truly understand about, the value of what you've done. And look, it's always nice when somebody thanks a veteran. But you know how you really thank a veteran? You thank them by setting up a system where they truly are appreciated.
Yes.
How about not sending them to war for profit, but wars that are actually that are needed, and that
you've said this a million times. One of the things that the conservative right always likes to point out is that you don't want to have the government basically dictating every direction in which the economy goes. And I agree with that. What I think could be argued is the fact that we have a huge infrastructure problem in this country. We are behind on so many things. You have so many returning veterans that want to live a life of dignity, have a good, if not a great paying job. Why are we not allocating job training, infrastructure training for so many of these veterans who would rather be doing something than having to potentially enlist again, which is a very common thing these days. What if we give them the opportunity to establish a career in something like, I don't know, building solar fields, building wind turbines, doing all the types of infrastructure things that so many people who have been in the military who are very knowledgeable about a lot of these things. And that is the type of path that we don't currently see, that we should be seeing. And that doesn't require us to start all of these new government programs.
Right.
The military already has an abundance of money. We should be allocating the career path that anyone who serves our country, whether it's for 6 months, 2 years, whatever it is, but you put yourself through the military, through basic, you make it, you are serving our country, you should definitely have that path provided for you, that if you do serve, that you're never going to have to worry again about whether or not your country is going to take care of you as you took care of it.
Right. And we also need to have accountability. Once those funds are allocated, we need to know where it went.
Yeah.
Because once they allocated, you don't know where it went, who got what, and then it's like out of sight, out of mind. So we got to have some accountability. And as well as the civilians, we have to take care of our civilians who are sacrificing their lives as well, working side by side with us, because we need civilians just like they need us. And they're in the trenches, the foxholes, just like all of us, because they're carrying out missions that nobody else are able to handle. So I appreciate all the civilians who have stuck by us face to face, eye to eye, and tooth to tooth, you know. So we have to honor everybody. Just take care of America. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
Take care of America.
Absolutely.
Is there any place that people can find your work? Do you have a website, anything that you're currently working on so people can follow you and obviously keep in touch and keep this conversation going?
Yes, you can reach me on my Instagram. It is Alton E. Pete. And you can also reach me on my LinkedIn, which is Alton Pete. And we do have some great news. We're going to be coming out with a film, a powerful, beautiful film called Life is So Precious.
There you go. So
we're going to be starting pre-production in March 2022, and production starts June 1st, 2022. Life is so precious.
I appreciate it, because we spend a lot of our time talking about really depressing, sad things, because really our job is to bring attention to things. And right now there's a lot of sad things. And I appreciate when someone like you comes on and has like much more positive approach. It's very appreciated. So thank you.
Yeah,
right.
No, go ahead.
Isn't that sad? It's getting old. I mean, we just talking about it, but when are we going to come up with solutions? So we gotta do something. I'm sorry.
All right. There we go. Respect to the P-line.
Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No,
never apologize for the cats and dogs. Never. No.
She always want to be on television as well. I tell you.
You're getting, Mr. Pete, you're getting way too much attention. That's the problem. You have to remember, this is her world. You're just living it. And a very beautiful kitty, I must say.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a pet owner.
All right, no, go ahead.
Pet father.
Yeah. I have 2 dogs, and they're like the best thing ever.
Right.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for your words of wisdom. Guys, the book is Life is So Precious. Please check it out. And remember, he is also going to have a film that will be Life is So Precious that will be coming out in 2022.
Yes.
Mr. Pete, thank you, sir.
Thank
you. Thank you enough. And we definitely look forward to connecting with you again in the future.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, y'all.
No, it's all good. Have a good one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
That's funny.
You know,
you get photobombed by the cat.
What better place to get photobombed? But you know, it's just so clear that, you know, we talk constantly about, you know, political nuance and the things that we're more or less missing when it comes to how we deal with our veterans and how there are these great unifiers on the political left and the political right. Both agree that we are wasting way too much money on the military industrial complex.
Well, yeah.
So if we get past the fact that there is this red-blue divide that we do not need to have anymore, it's really just a matter now of what we do to bring them together. And when I think, Jen, we didn't ask him, but I think you would agree that, Mr. Pete was definitely on the political right. Would you say that was?
Yeah, yes, very traditional, military, minded, in that we do have our enemies, and I have different thoughts on that, like what really constitutes an enemy and what the threat level really is. And but definitely he is in the right mindset.
I think he's definitely right. I mean, there's no ground military like ours, and there never will be.
And here's my point: there shouldn't be.
But when it comes to cyber warfare, that's another story. And that's something that China, for example, could very well, be outflanking us at this point.
You know what, though? If we were really concerned about China, we would have dealt with it from the economic perspective, and this would have gone back way more years than where we are right now. And they are more of a threat because they're smarter economically than we are.
Well,
that's the threat.
And this is where and again, this is the problem with Trump, because there are times where his message was correct. There is this misnomer that when you say America first, it means that you're a white nationalist, and it's simply not true. When you are equating America first to our economic component of society, we're looking at it as NAFTA destroyed our manufacturing jobs in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
It's true. And if we put America first in that regard, we not only wouldn't have had NAFTA, we wouldn't have been this close to getting the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Yeah, well.
Those are the types of things where somebody like Alton Pete would say, we agree 100%.
Yes, they're populist issues. That's the difference. Do you want to do do you see what is it you want to talk about? I have all the articles pulled up.
Well, I think a great place to, kind of wind down this conversation.
Well, first, don't forget that I made a story time for today. It's not quite a story time,
so we've got to hit that before we finish up. Okay, fair enough. So we do have, obviously, a number of things to talk about. And, of course, we focus on Florida. And, my goodness, we just got, when we talk about Flori-duh, we had no shortage of what we were going to address this week. And, of course, where could we possibly start but how would you like to describe this guy, Jen?
Well, first of all, let me be clear that the gentleman in this picture is a clip art. That's not the actual person.
But he was wearing a woman's pantyhose.
Yes, he was.
Florida man compares self to Rosa Parks. Kicked off flight for wearing red thong as a face mask.
Yes. So this gentleman was on a plane, and this was on December 15th, and he told that they told him that he needed to wear a mask. So he's wearing a woman's red thong. He then tells them that he was in compliance because his nose and mouth were covered. However, he was kicked off the flight because the airline didn't agree. And then he went on to said, this is the best. Everything that has sparked change in this country has started from everyday people. Rosa Parks was nobody famous. She changed the course of history. So in other words, this gentleman actually likened his being removed from a plane for wearing a red panty on his face to the plight of Black people seeking civil rights and being able to, share mass transit. This is really, to me, just where we have fallen in terms of the level of stupidity. I can't even.
There's a thing called tone deafness. And this person has it in spades. And that, unfortunately, is this. If you are on a plane and you're wearing what clearly stood out as a woman's thong, you are not taking this seriously.
No, and he even said he had tried it a few times and he hadn't gotten thrown off before. So this is somebody who was trying to create trouble and get arrested, or trying to get removed from the plane. This is somebody who was just up to trouble. But I just think it's just funny that somehow he sees this as a civil rights crusade. It's just so absurd to me that That's another reason why I didn't use the actual picture of the actual person, because he doesn't deserve the credit. But I did pick the picture of Rosa Parks.
Well, if you didn't think it could get more Flori-duh, well, we prove to you every day that it absolutely can, and then it will continue. But sweeping change is needed to prevent condo collapses in Florida. We have been talking about this for quite some time. The Surfside building collapse was just the tip of the iceberg. It was only going to get worse. And now you're seeing exactly what is going to happen here. And the problem we now face, and this is the one argument, because the infrastructure bill is a joke overall. However, if the money that Florida is supposed to get, which I believe is around $20 billion, not nearly enough, not even close, but let's say a few billion of it at least gets things moving in the right direction, because a lot of these buildings that are on the coastline, particularly on the Atlantic coastline, I can't say what the deal is on the Gulf Coast, but what I can tell you is that saltwater erosion was a problem that was being addressed 2 years ago at city commission meetings, and nothing was done. Now, the argument, of course, is what could a city commission actually do? Not much. In this case, if we have federal funds that will allow for the dilapidation of certain buildings that must be dilapidated and the creation of new buildings, that would obviously be very helpful. But Jen?
Okay, so I want to preface this with, as of right now, no major legislation has been filed. So these are just things that they're just talking about. Like, hopefully we'll just, I guess, just.
Isn't it great when we have politicians who get pats on the back for talking about
Yes, we formed a committee. We have a panel. We're going to discuss this. So apparently this is not, there's been a few different commissions about this tragedy, but this is a group. This was the Miami-Dade grand jury. So a Miami-Dade County grand jury charged with looking into the deadly collapse released its report this week. The 43-page document offers up a lengthy list of recommendations aimed at stopping another tragedy like this from happening. Again, it's recommendations. So really, it's not any more valuable than toilet paper, but let's look at some of these anyway. So there's 40 suggestions apparently in this. Some of them include lowering the time frame for recertification buildings in Miami-Dade, because right now it's at 40 years, to doing it every 10 to 15 years with updated reports, imposing a duty to report on engineers and architects. The fact that that already isn't there, this never ceases to amaze me when I read things that are being suggested to help problems. There's so many times they're basic things that I cannot believe were not already in place. It's things that I wouldn't have ever thought of, like, make sure building stands before walking away, like basic things. Requiring condo towers be repainted and waterproofed every 10 years. That's not unreasonable. Like, these are things that should be, like, it's weird to me that this isn't already a thing. So apparently there really are no laws.
That's really the whole point. That's
removing a state law that allows condo boards to skip funding reserves used for repairs. And this is where I'm going to tell them, this is the thing, you can make all those recommendations in the world. And you can require condo boards to do all sorts of things and spend their money. And you can even require them to have assessments to get the money. But that's not going to actually make there be the money. And that's the thing that is just plaguing me about all of this, because as somebody, I worked for Becker and Polykoff doing condo association, homeowners, covenant enforcement litigation. I've gone to so many board meetings, more than I'd care to count. I understand how that nonsense works. And I'm telling you, even if they were all 100% on the same page, they can't afford to do what is going to be necessary to keep these buildings.
And that is where having the federal legislation come in that is necessary. And of course, this is also something that isn't being talked about. We are horrifically overdeveloped in South Florida, particularly along the coastline. There are a lot of people who are going to have to relocate. That is just the way it is. It may not be what people want, but it is what ultimately they are going to need to do. And that's a hard truth for a lot of people to face. And this is also another hard truth which doesn't get talked about. And this is coming from us running a congressional campaign in what is a very blue district. But there are also a number of red patches in the district. And you know what's true about the red patches versus the blue patches? The red patches are not overdeveloped, and the blue patches are. And that's a problem.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those things, and I'm going to keep harping on it, that every time people want to talk about state initiatives, whether it's executive orders, whether it's, committee findings, legislation, any of those things are all ultimately going to be irrelevant, because the funds that are going to be necessary now, and here's what's interesting in this, and I'm just going to say this is just one little set of numbers, is that we know 3.5 million people in Florida live in condominiums. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And most of those condominiums are not wealthy, right? Like they're not the wealthy people. They're not the people in the Porsche condo where you could drive the Porsche up to your condo.
No,
that's not the majority.
Live in sunny Isles.
Yes. But the point is, and I will keep reiterating this, the only way that these condominiums, that especially the older ones that are really in need of repair, are going to be able to exist are with federal infrastructure money and federal infrastructure work. It's not going to come from the state. It's not going to be able to come from the condo boards. And you can force them to do all sorts of stuff. But the bottom line is they are not going to be able to afford the changes. And in fact, in that Champlain Towers, just in case people don't realize, the Surfside Tower that collapsed, that building, it was something like a 1-bedroom condo there was going to have been assessed $300,000 to have been able to do the funds that were necessary. Somebody that's been living in a 1-bedroom condo in a place like that, in an old building, they can't afford a $300,000 assessment. That might be more than their condo was worth when they bought it. Like, people cannot afford this money. So they can make them pay it, but can't bleed a rock, people. So I just think it's funny. They can have all these committees and grand juries and come up with all these conclusions. It's not going to solve crap.
I'm telling you, it's almost like you're just waiting for the dam to break. That's kind of like,
well, there's going to be more collapses. Like, that's not even a question of if, it's only
because they're not really dealing with it. I mean, they assessed one building that was in, I think, Hallandale, or it may have been Hollywood, and they said, yeah, this is dilapidated. You got to move out. And so it must be demolition, because it's infrastructure is not, it's not safe. It's just not. And so you got to move on. And speaking of housing, and it's a great segue, Florida lawmakers asked Governor DeSantis, this is of course led by Carlos Guillermo Smith, hats off to him, and also I believe Representative Anna Escamani was also involved with this. And this, of course, the housing crisis is difficult in South Florida, but it's even worse in Central Florida. Orlando is one of the most fastest growing cities in the country, maybe the fastest as it stands right now.
And I think that was last week on our Focus on Florida, that we have the most unaffordable housing basically in the country.
Oh, yeah, we do. Oh, Tampa's the most unaffordable city to live in right now, which is amazing. Yeah. To declare a state of emergency on housing, which should be done. But again, why is this not going to happen? Remember, for those of you who may not know, Representative Guillermo Smith and Representative Escamani are two non-corporate progressive representatives in the Florida State House.
There are nearly 24 House and Senate Democrats are calling for this. So there's, which is still
not a lot, but it's something, and it's important. And I have no doubt that Chev is probably on there as well. And this is what you have to remember here, and this is probably the biggest reason why this issue never gets dealt with. When you think about the corporate special interests in the state of Florida, and who really is at the heart of this problem. And this is a bipartisan problem. This ain't Republican, this ain't Democrat. Land developers own both parties. And they do not want any part of rent control, or housing control, any of that.
So what we're seeing, but let me just say, so what they're seeing is that in Central Florida, on average, rents are increasing by 20% since January. And then you have Tampa Bay, almost 25%. And so they were urging Governor DeSantis to classify anything above 10% as price gouging and to enforce it. Now, DeSantis's office pushed back on the issue and said, this is a nationwide problem that must be addressed at the federal level. Talk about passing the buck. Now, to me, this is one of those things that makes him look small and weak. I'm sorry. You want to come out like you're actually doing things and that you're not taking crap. How come you think that you stand up to the federal government with X, Y, and Z, but yet you're going to defer to them when your people are ending up homeless?
Well,
So
again, this gets back to the fact that DeSantis is very cozy with corporate special interests. And in this case, corporate special interests related to land development and building ownership. You think landlords want any part of affordable housing? No, they want to make their maximum. So if the free market gets to decide, and if that means that a whole bunch of people have to live on the streets, then that's the way it has to be.
Yeah.
That's the failure of capitalism, is this idea that there is no consideration for those that are struggling. It's either kill or be killed. That is the mindset. And credit to Representative Guillermo Smith for putting this forward, because it is becoming a crisis. So much is falling apart around us all the time.
Yeah.
And what's ending up happening, as we have seen, is when somebody cannot afford to live on their own, now you see people that are renting houses or condos or townhouses, and instead of it being one person's dwelling, it becomes 3 or 4 people's dwelling, and they split the rent because that's the only way they can afford to live. That, to me, is as big of an issue that doesn't get talked about. That's where it's kind of like it's like when the Biden administration tries to talk up the numbers about unemployment. And in reality, you're not addressing the fact that there are a lot of people who have given up looking for work.
Or what about the people that are working 3 jobs?
Correct.
Like, to me, I'm sorry, employment is not a good measurement of how we're doing.
That's correct.
It's just not. That's like, it's the same difference as using like the stock market to see how we're doing. That is really not a measurement of how regular people are doing. It's extremely misleading. So I don't want to hear unemployment numbers. Like, that's irrelevant to me.
No, I think standard of living and happiness are definitely 2 things that do not get measured in the United States, and they need to be measured and at the forefront of what we're trying to do.
And so this is something that makes me very unhappy.
And so if you want to get a little bit more unhappy, and this is one that I don't like seeing, 4 Florida species lands on last chance list, and that looks like the monarch butterfly. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, it is. So a report from the Endangered Species Coalition highlights 10 species in its last chance report, and 4 of them are in Florida, which doesn't surprise me. We have a lot of things here, like Florida bites and is full of reptiles. So on the list this year, the 4 that are in Florida are monarch butterflies, the diamondback terrapin, the Florida key deer, and the elkhorn coral. And I did put a picture of a Florida key deer, and let me tell you, they are so cute. They're so cute, and they swim from little key to little key. They swim. You see their little antlers sticking up in the water when they swim. They're so cute. Look at that face. Seriously. I know. And actually once when we were sitting and eating dinner at this resort on the beach, Jason and I stayed somewhere, one of the deer, they're not scared of people, mind you. He came right up to the table and went to go take the food off of Jason's plate. So Jason had to like grab him by the antlers and was like pushing him away from the table. But they're beautiful. Like I don't know. So these things are going away because we don't know how to take care of our things and have nice things. So that's what's happening. This year, the monarch numbers have increased. Last year, the numbers were really, really poor. But the problem is because they're not year-round residents and they're migratory, they're facing hardships in other places as well. So those obviously cannot be just attributed.
Well, it's my favorite butterfly. I've always loved the monarch.
And so they're going to dwindle, and we're killing them. And when there are no more key deer, that'll be like the saddest thing. How many places in the world have swimming deer?
Not many.
From island to island.
Or deer that are not afraid to be amongst people.
Which actually to me makes me think that they're not so smart. But
maybe so.
And we don't need to be losing coral either. By the way, that's one that nobody really looks at. So something called, what's it called? The elkhorn coral. I don't know exactly what elkhorn coral is, but it's one of those things like that probably has a butterfly effect where that elkhorn coral feeds whatever algae things that feed the fish, to feed the, and that's how things start to dwindle. So when something like a coral dies off, that will have a ripple effect of gargantuan proportions, I assure you. That's one of the biggest problems is our dying coral reefs around the world. So
there was a great documentary made a number of years ago about the Great Barrier Reef that was dying off the coast of Australia. And it's, again, we are we really are playing with fire, and we've been playing with fire for way too long. And we do not make any effort. I mean, we do, but we don't. We don't have that consensus effort that it is time to make significant change in the way we live.
Mario, it was hilarious. This is a place called Palm Island, and or Palm Resort, and it's on Little Torch Key. It's this. My husband and I were hands down the poorest people there. This is the kind of place where people with yachts stop off in between when they're moving their yachts from one continent to another. Like, this is an island. You have to be at least 16. There's no kids there, which is one of the reasons I wanted to go there. And so we're having a fine dining experience on the sand. So we're on the sand, but we're talking tablecloths and china. Like, it was beautiful. And the deer just walks right up to the table, and they're tall enough that the mouth is actually table height. But yeah, it was kind of surreal. It was very surreal.
Before we get to our final.
Oh, yes, because I have some words.
Yeah.
And if anything's going to get me in trouble, it's going to be this.
You know, everybody wants to blame Senator Manchin for why the Build Back Better bill fell apart. He's just a scapegoat. This is no different than when the public option was removed from the Obamacare legislation in 2009 because of Senator Lieberman. This is no different than blaming Jill Stein for the Supreme Court going hard right conservative.
So, okay, I'm sorry, go on.
There will always be an excuse. And I saw on social media today with some of the upper class liberal blue check marks, as they like to say, talking about, well, we just need to elect more Democrats. But you know what one of these people said, Jen?
What?
Smart voters. Smart voters know that you just need to elect more Democrats to nullify somebody like Joe Manchin. First of all, that's BS, and you know it, because what'll end up happening, this is no different, ladies and gentlemen, than what happened with the infrastructure bill. The squad, plus a few others, voted no. So what happened? The Democrats ended up getting a dozen GOPers to join them on voting for the bill. So what does that tell you? It tells you that this is just kabuki theater. This idea that Joe Manchin is the one person who is preventing this bill from passing is BS.
It's just like WWF. But meanwhile, I've decided, like, in all of our travels, you know, I keep coming up with these congresswomen that are just dumb as fuck. Right. I mean, we're already demonetized. These are DAF congresswomen. And there's men too. There are. But for some reason, some of these women, because they're really pretty and they're attractive and people think, but they're morons. Okay. And so I thought we should start like a club of these women. And so I introduced.
You can do this. I can't do this.
Well, I'll do it proudly, my friend. I introduced to you the Cunt Club. Congresswomen in urgent need.
God, what are you
Congresswomen
doing?
in urgent need of teaching. Welcomes new member Maria Salazar. And I want to just say that honestly, these are women that seriously are poster children for our horrific education system in this country. This woman
is a bad education system. I'll give you that.
Well, let me tell you something. I don't care where they went to school. So apparently, Republicans are launching a bill that would prompt schools to incorporate the failed history of communism into their curriculum. The crucial Communism Teaching Act, oh my God, hello, which has 60 House co-sponsors, one of them our esteemed woman here, comes after Republicans hit out against critical race theory. The only equality communism offers is being equally poor, equally hungry, equally oppressed, and equally exiled. The truth is communism is a cancer, Representative Maria Salazar said. Let's be clear, Maria Salazar. Yes, your family, your parents were Cuban exiles. And I understand that is one very, very small, narrow perception of communism. I get it. But for this woman who apparently went through it, she was born in Miami, so she went through our education system. Yeah. If she wasn't taught about communism, then I don't know what she was taught, because quite honestly, Maria, all we're taught is negative stuff about Soviet Union and Chinese communism. All we are is indoctrinated that's bad. So the fact that they're wanting to introduce this as if this is something new indicates to me that she is in fact a moron. Because we are only taught the negatives of communism in this country. We are completely indoctrinated that capitalism is the be all end all and that our country is the good guys and everyone else is the bad guys. That's all we are taught. So it's so weird to me that this moron thinks that we actually need legislation to teach us what we're already being taught, because they feel so threatened that people are saying negative things about our country.
I always love representatives who wear really big crosses around their necks, and really they need to prove just how in love with Jesus they are, apparently.
So her thing is she wants to make sure that Gen Z is as hateful and negative about communism as we supposed to be raised to be. And basically she thinks American students should learn about the Soviet gulags, where Stalin starved 3.5 million Ukrainians. Yes, I agree, Maria, they should, but we should also be teaching them about what we're doing to people in Guantanamo Bay, don't you think? So to me, those are exactly the things we have been learning. I don't remember ever learning anything positive about anything having to do with the Soviet Union or China, for that matter. And yet they think we need legislation that we should only teach that. This is a moron. So welcome to the cunt club, Maria. And hopefully at some point we won't be having to have these discussions, because quite honestly, it's ludicrous.
She was basically a television presenter who decided to run for Congress, and she ran against an even more distasteful representative in Donna Shalala.
Oh, yes. Oh, no doubt. So Shalala is a troll.
So when you end up running for Congress against somebody, you know, this is
a hobbit. She looks like a hobbit.
You're really letting it fly today.
I'm pissed. I can't stand it when women do shit like this.
Well, again, this also speaks to this argument, like I was saying before, about how when you have a blue check upper class liberal who wants to tell you that smart voters know that they just need to vote for more Democrats. First of all, I don't think they comprehend just how condescending that is when you talk like that. Smart voters. So what
it's democratic, that's their way. They're elitist.
Well, it's not just their way. It's also their way of basically saying, if you don't listen to what we say, you're a moron. That's basically what they're saying. They're saying, yes, well, we know what's good for you, and if you don't listen to us, then you're a bad person.
And I want to be clear that there were other people involved in this ridiculous, like, teach how bad communism is legislation. Oh, that's what we need. This is what these people think they should be spending their time on, is policy for mind control. Like, that's her priority. Screw the fact that you've got homeless, hungry people in your district, Maria. Screw them. Let's make sure that we keep indoctrinating young people with that anti-Castro, old school friggin' Cuban exile mentality, which, by the way, is dying. But there were a lot of other people on that, of course, like your Josh Hawleys of the world and all those losers that don't seem to really know anything. But yes, these to me are poster children for the dire need of better education in this country.
Yes. And again, I think it also speaks to, you know, we're dealing with a situation here where issues like communism become much more mainstream in terms of conversation because the system we're currently under is failing. And so if the system is failing, what do you think millions and millions of people are going to do? They're going to turn to something else.
But see, instead of trying to solve some of those problems, their goal is to brainwash people to not thinking this is what it is. You think it's bad here? Well, it's worse there. So be happy with what you get. That's the mentality.
You think the Democrats suck? Well, the Republicans are even worse. And
yes,
that is the message. It's not, wow, we really don't do enough for you.
Right. Wow, either way, it's
like you got something.
Because it is so much more worth somebody like Maria Salazar's while to spearhead this anti-communism campaign, get clicks, get notoriety. Who knows what office she's
This is no different. And I guarantee you that if Wasserman Schultz is not a co-sponsor of this bill, yet she will be. This is no different than Wasserman Schultz trying to piggyback on the whole, oh, everybody's a racist thing and this is bigotry and we can't do anything to not deal with real problems. That's why somebody like Salazar does this, to distract, to get anybody's attention away from the fact that, first of all, she's a joke of a representative.
I didn't really know anything about her until I saw this clip of her talking about, why don't they teach this? Yeah, they do. That's all we learn. It's
but
so stupid.
Anything to scare people. And remember, it's an election year. But as far as I can tell, and with all due respect to Angel, Maria doesn't have a challenger. I
was thinking about that lately. I know, but I really think we need to be doing a better job of at least promoting that as in a matter of not necessarily with a final victory as the only be all end all.
Right.
But this is an area he is so much better than her. Like he's so much better than her. It's just obscene.
And again, the argument could be made, well, Angel has no experience. Yeah, neither does Maria Salazar.
Wait a minute. But what has all this experience gotten us? I don't want somebody. Donna Shalala, she had a lot of experience. You want experience. You want someone like Donna Shalala. That is the last thing we need. I don't want somebody with experience. I really don't. There are enough assistants, aides, secretaries. There's enough staff people with institutional memory that have done this for a long time. We don't need representatives to have experience. We just need them to actually be representative. It's not complicated, people.
Easier said than done. Unfortunately, that is where we stand today. But we are going to be able to air these grievances at even greater length in just 4 days' time. Because on Wednesday night, we will be talking with lots of wonderful guests. We're not going to say who they are. You're just going to have to show up because it's going to be fun. Jen already.
But I did spill the beans that you said Steve Donziger wants to come air his grievance.
If Steven Donziger is going to be one of our guests, that should give you an idea of the type of guests that we're going to have that night. So make sure you tune in, 8 o'clock Eastern time.
It will be a Festivus for the rest of us.
We'll have a poll. We'll have some marketing material.
I'm making a meatloaf. I'm making the vegan meatloaf. You have to have the meatloaf dinner when you have the
everybody send a tweet and subtweet to Jason Alexander that we need to have him join us for the festival.
Oh my God, I would love to have him. I mean, well, that would be just hilarious. Well, he hated the Festivus. This was so much more of a Jerry Stiller thing, but
no, but he'll definitely he'll have some airing of grievances.
We need somebody to do feats of strength with you. You're going to need to get Sam or somebody to come up here that'll sit here and do, because otherwise,
Jason, quit complaining and fight me. Until you pin me, Festivus ain't over.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, and I don't want it to have to be me because that might be embarrassing for you.
Yeah,
you don't want me to give you the smackdown.
No, but that'll be fun. We'll obviously have a lot to talk about.
Maybe I'll pin Lou.
No, Lou will be the Festivus queen. So
Lou is the Festivus queen. Lou's Jewish though. Lou's Jewish. She doesn't understand the whole thing about Festivus.
Well, if we're counting on any miracles,
we are going to be having some Festivus miracles, guys. What do we have coming? Oh, I wanted to tell you, we got an invitation to Medea's for, they're having an outdoor Christmas party at that farm.
When?
On the 28th.
All right.
We're going to go.
Oh, because she's out of town right now, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing a holiday. Well, they're not exactly it's not exactly a very religious group.
No, but maybe we'll have some holiday cheer to spread. Maybe we can do.
I'm not very holiday cheerful. I'm just not. I'm like.
You have your purple hat?
I think we do have the purple hats, but they're not going to match my Festivus shirts.
No, but they can match if we go out and do something in the community. So we'll see what happens.
So big Festivus, guys. Check it out on Wednesday. We're going to go 8 to 10. Is that it? 8 to 10 on Wednesday, Festivus. Yeah. But yeah, we have a very interesting array cast of characters.
We'll see what happens, Mario.
Oh, you want me to get you got to grab them by the antlers, man. That's what you got to do. You got to grab them by the antlers because otherwise they're winning. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but they may hit me with their paw, with their hoofs.
That is not what deer do.
Well, you never know.
Okay, speaking of hooves, I've been binge watching Yellowstone in a way that is just probably not healthy. And I'm obsessed with this show, obsessed with Yellowstone. So anybody
I've heard that Mr. Costner has found a revitalization in his career, which is
okay. First of all, he was never not revitalized, and he is aging so well. But this show, and I really wish you would watch it, but you probably never will because you don't watch those kind of shows. But it's like if Dallas and Legends of the Fall had a merger, right? Like it's this beautiful merger.
So basically, like a bunch of wealthy cowboy people,
ranchers in Montana, but not just ranchers, big ranch, like the biggest ranch.
Yeah, like hundreds of acres. Yeah, I get it. So
thousands of acres. Like this is massive.
Okay.
But anyway, so it's
maybe
about
that's a place to go buy some land and build a place. That ain't going to be Asheville.
But the character, the daughter character, the character's name is Beth Dutton. I love her. She's basically Claire Underwood, but in Yellowstone. I cannot explain it any better than that. Like there's something about these women characters. It's like they're definitely psychopaths, but yet so completely understandable and likable.
One thing I've learned recently, especially with the limited time I have to do much, is that when you get hooked on a show, it's very difficult to pull yourself away if the next episode is just a click away. And on that note, we will see you guys for the Festivus, for the rest of us on Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Bye, all.